Hello and welcome to our software tutorial series. This tutorial will walk you through how to add taxpayer information onto the main information sheet in the software. In this tutorial, you will learn how to identify valid Social Security numbers, complete taxpayer information, and select Presidential Election Campaign Fund. The first section of the main information sheet contains these fields: the taxpayer and spouse's names, Social Security numbers, mailing address, email addresses, telephone numbers, birthdays, and occupations. The primary taxpayer's Social Security number carries automatically, based on the Social Security number entered when you start a return. If the return is filed jointly with the spouse, you will enter the spouse's Social Security number when you move to that field when entering information into the main information sheet. These are the valid Social Security number ranges. Social Security numbers must be in these ranges so returns are not rejected. When entering Social Security numbers into the software, just type the numbers. The software will automatically insert the hyphens. If the Social Security number is not valid, the software will not calculate Earned Income Credit. For more information in regards to Earned Income Credit eligibility, see the IRS website. Select the text box for the first name of the taxpayer. Enter the taxpayer's first name, middle initial, and then their last name. Please note, the only punctuation allowed in name entry is a hyphen. We will now enter the spouse's first name and middle initial. If the spouse's last name is different than the primary taxpayer's last name, you would enter their last name in the entry to the right of the spouse's initial. The spouse's last name must match the name on the IRS file with the information provided to them by the Social Security Administration. A name not matching the IRS master file is one of the major causes of rejected returns. The taxpayer should notify the Social Security Administration in the event of marriage, divorce, or other life change. We will now enter the spouse's Social Security number in the spouse's Social Security number field. Use the name line 2 field only if the address requires 2 lines or if an in care of is used. Use the % sign, followed by a space, and the name to be used for in care of delivery. In the event of a deceased taxpayer or spouse, you must use the name line 2 field to enter the name of either the surviving spouse or the taxpayer. Do not enter the % sign if you are filing for a deceased person. If this is the surviving spouse's name, enter it here and in the spouse line of the main information sheet. Enter the address of the taxpayer and spouse, and then type the zip code in the zip code field. When you hit the enter key after typing in the zip code, the software will automatically fill out the correct city and state in the city and state fields. For this tutorial, the taxpayer lives in the United States. If you enter a U.S. address, do not enter a foreign address in the foreign address field. Enter the email address of the taxpayer in the email address box. In the daytime, evening, cell phone, and foreign phone fields. For this tutorial, we will enter the phone numbers for both the taxpayer and the spouse. Please remember not to use punctuation in telephone number fields. Enter the birth dates for the taxpayer and the spouse in the birth date fields. The birth date is used for loading many forms that may be needed in a return. The birth date is also required for taxpayers qualifying for Earned Income Credit with no dependents. It is recommended that the birth date be entered because the taxpayer may be entitled to age-related benefits on both the federal and state returns. Enter the occupation of the taxpayer and spouse. The occupation data automatically carries to the appropriate entries on the return. Remember, do not enter both a United States address and a foreign address. If you enter a foreign address, the program does not calculate the Earned Income Credit. The Taxpayer Information section on the main information sheet contains Special Processing, Excluding Income from Puerto Rico, Blind Exemption, Disability Exemption, and Taxpayer and Spouse Dates of Death. If the taxpayer qualifies for Special Military Processing, select one of the options from the drop-down list on the Special Processing field. Choose the location of deployment or choose combat zone for multiple or unknown locations of service. You must select either the yes or no checkbox to show whether the taxpayer is excluding income from Puerto Rico. In this example, we will select the no checkbox to the question, "Are you excluding Puerto Rico income from this tax return?" Check the Check If Blind checkbox if the taxpayer or spouse qualify for the blind exemption. In this tutorial, neither are blind, so we will not select either checkbox. Select the Yes checkbox if the taxpayer or spouse is permanently and totally disabled. This checkbox is for state purposes only. In this example, neither is disabled, so we will leave the checkboxes blank. If the taxpayer or spouse died in 2010 or 2011, enter the date of death in the taxpayer or spouse box. If the taxpayer or spouse died during the year, the date of death prints across the top of the return, next to the name, as required by the IRS. You must use the Name Line 2 field in the address area at the top of the main information sheet and enter the name of the person filing the return for the deceased person. For example, if the taxpayer died and there is a surviving spouse, enter the surviving spouse's name in the Name Line 2 field. The tax return is being filed by entry calculates based on the status of the return. If this return has a filing status of married filing jointly, the surviving spouse is selected. If this return has a filing status other than married filing jointly, the software selects the Someone Else checkbox. Select the You or Spouse checkbox to denote whether the taxpayer or the spouse would like $3 to go to the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. In this example, we will not select either checkbox. Selecting one of these does not change the tax due or the amount of the expected refund. Selecting either of these gives the government permission to transfer $3 of the income tax collected from that individual from the general tax fund to the campaign fund. This fund is allocated to presidential candidates based on the amount of money each candidate has received from small contributions of individuals. You should now be able to identify valid Social Security numbers, complete taxpayer information, and select Presidential Election Campaign Fund. Thank you for viewing this tutorial.